Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by New Relic. Use promo code TWIST and get a free month of New Relic Pro. To redeem, visit newrelic.com/thisweekin and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it. And by Igloo, an intranet you'll actually like. Visit igloosoftware.com/thisweekin for a chance to win a $150 iTunes gift card.
Hey everybody, it's November 9th, 2012. Obama has been reelected president. With me on the program, Declan McCullagh, the chief political correspondent of CNET, CBS, and Henry Blodget of Business Insider. It's going to be an amazing episode. We have a lot to talk about. Technology played a big role in the election. Let's discuss it this week, right now.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's November 9th, 2012, and Obama was elected president Tuesday night, re-elected president, and we've got a great program here today talking about technology and politics and other stuff going on in the internet space. If it's your first time joining us, where the hell have you been? We're 300 episodes in. We've got two amazing guests that I've really wanted to have on the program for a while. Declan McCullagh is an old friend from CNET, and he is their chief political correspondent. He's been writing about this stuff for decades. And Henry Blodget of Business Insider is with us, a former internet analyst and an old friend, both two-decade friends. Took two-decade-old relationships there. God, I'm getting old, Kirin.
We all are, Jason.
Exactly. Hey, let me start off by thanking our sponsor for today's program, or one of our two sponsors and partners. New Relic is a great service. Here it is. We get metrics every day of how our servers are doing, our uptime, which days are busiest, and it's really helpful to know exactly how your web apps are performing. The launch ticker has been doing great. It's an innovative new format that Kirin and I have been working on. And we really need to know what the server resources are and how we're doing with that. And it's been working very well. We've been making a lot of changes to the code to make things work better. And these guys do a really great job. Customers like Skullcandy, Spotify, Nike, Zillow, Vonage, all use New Relic to just check out on their performance and make sure their servers are running as fast as they can. Marissa Mayer told me long ago that the best way they could add a feature to Google was to make it faster, because then it would increase usage. So they would add features, no additional usage. They would make it faster, usage would go up. Hey, you need to have a partner like New Relic to get that virtuous cycle going, get some X-ray vision into your web apps, and the truth shall set you free when you start to see what's going on with your app. It can be a little scary, like, hey, maybe I have to go to the developers and the code's not perfect, or the servers are issues, but you got to face these issues if you're going to build a great world-class company, and New Relic is a great partner for that. Go to newrelic.com/thisweekin and create your account. And superfan Jess Bachman, and he is really a superfan, made a great T-shirt. Here it is for This Week in Startups. And if you create a free account, you'll get one of those T-shirts. So that's a pretty good deal. These guys understand how to engage with our superfans and our audience. They understand that you guys, as members of our audience, work on startups, and they want to reach you. And hey, they're made this great T-shirt. So go ahead and go to newrelic.com/thisweekin to get the elite superfan TWiST T-shirt, TWiST. Look, it's got the samurai sword on it. All that stuff we talk about, how hard it is to build startups. You got to be a samurai. All by Jess Bachman, who is a super fan who I've met before. And you can check him out at byjess.net. So thank you to New Relic. On the program today, Henry Blodget, who, I guess, Henry, we've known each other for almost 2 decades now. How's everything going at Business Insider?
That's going very well, thanks. Great to have you back fully in the media business.
Yeah, exactly.
We've missed you.
I know. Well, I had my little diversion into search. I got my ass kicked, and I'm back, baby. I'm back.
Good.
And I have the inside.com domain name. Some interesting speculation as to what I'm going to do with it.
I know, that's great. Well, let's merge. We could use it. Put it together.
Oh, right. I forgot. You're Insider, and we have inside.com.
Exactly.
Right. Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, sure. I bought a domain name for under $100,000, I'll take half of Business Insider. We'll merge it, no problem. But you have a Business Insider is doing tremendous. What's the number of uniques per month now, and how many people are working on the site? It's really doing very well.
It's been doing great. We're over 20 million uniques now and over 100 people at the company. So it really is growing steadily and becoming very substantial, which is fabulous.
I knew that you were going to have great success when Nick Denton told me over lunch. Henry Blodget built the business site that I would have built. Like, he was like, he's the sleeper. Like, this is like 2 months into Business Insider. He was already knowing that you would get it. What do you think the success of the site is attributed to? Because it's been a pretty good run in just 3 or 4 years.
Well, I think the key is that the product that we provide is a combination of editorial and technology. And so many of the folks we compete with, there's this hard wall between the editor types and the tech types. And often the tech folks are completely subservient and so forth. And really the combination, as you were just saying, it's speed matters and so forth, combination of the two things. And ultimately, speaking to people about stuff that is very important and not trying to fit square pegs and round holes by trying to put a newspaper online or a television show online, but just taking full advantage of the internet. That's what Nick Denton has done. That's what Matt Drudge did. That's what Huffington Post did. And that's certainly what we've tried to do. And that's helped a lot.
Yeah, well done and great success so far. Declan, you're on the call. Where are you, Declan? There he is. Hey, Declan. Wow, look, you're in the library.
Well, no, this is actually my home office. I could have done this from CNET's studios or offices at 235 2nd Street in San Francisco, but it just, you don't want to talk and have all these people walking back or behind you on their way back from lunch. And so I figured I'll do it in my home office, and you get to see my taste in books behind me.
It makes you look, it just adds like 7 IQ points instantly, and you're already a smart guy. Hey, let's get right into it. Kirin, what's the top story?
All right, the top story, since you mentioned the election, we also happen to know that big data was actually one of the big stories from the election. So as it turns out, Obama's campaign, they realized that back in 2008, they didn't have all their databases in one place, and they decided they weren't going to let that happen this time around. They consolidated everything. They used metric-driven emails to raise money, and even the office pools that would try and bet which ones would be most successful were very often wrong. They used Facebook to replicate knocking on doors, and they found that 1 in 5 people contacted through Facebook acted on the request. They used modeling to determine their ad buys, and they found that those were 14% more efficient than in 2008.
Okay.
And then we also know that they
let's do Nate next. Nate's
okay. Well, and then there were also these dinners that they did to raise money, and they used the data from their George Clooney dinner that they did on the West Coast to find the right person on the East Coast. That was Sarah Jessica Parker, and who to invite for that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they actually figured that out as well.
Yep. They used data every step of the way. They modeled thousands of times how they were doing in every state and what they needed to do, and they allocated the resources accordingly.
So I guess the question is this a big data or a social election?
Right. Well, and then, what else are we going to see in politics next? What technology-driven thing are we going to see next?
Declan, this is your realm of expertise. I mean, we've been having, I guess, Meetup.com was the false start. Like, oh my God, who was the guy who did the Dean? Was it Dean Scream?
Howard Dean.
Howard Dean. Like, we've had so many false starts, but is this the real deal now? Is the internet playing a big role?
Well, I mean, we've been saying ever since, you and I go back a while, we're both getting old. We've been saying for a while, is this going to be the year of the internet? They're really making a difference in the election. And I think it was the year of social media. But but the interesting thing is if you actually look at the numbers, the internet is not being used as a place candidates spend money. It's being used for two things. It's being used as a place where they raise money and scads of it. That's the first thing you do when you sign up to one of their mailing lists. You can never get off of it. They're worse than the Direct Marketing Association. And the second thing is to get out the vote. But if you look at where they're actually spending the money that they raise on the internet, it's still about 98% of the media buys or advertising they're buying is still old media. It's television and radio and yard signs.
And the dialogue hasn't seemed. It doesn't seem that the internet has elevated the dialogue. Henry, you cover the election obviously a lot on the site. The dialogue is devolving, it seems. It didn't seem to go to a higher level, did it?
I agree. I don't think it's elevated it, but I think what it has allowed people to do is we hear it now, and it is deafening. And I have to say, this is the first election cycle where I've been very, very focused for the entire 4 years on the sort of development of the dialogue and the different positions and the whole effort of the Republicans over the past 4 years to make Obama look incredibly ineffective by saying no to everything he wanted, and just how it's almost like bullet points get distributed to everybody on the internet every morning as to what their talking points that day are supposed to be, what both sides are. And I do think there is constructive engagement, and I think the ability for stories that really do break ground to go crazy and actually educate people is very encouraging. But what I've been struck by again and again is people want to hear what they believe, and they want to be on their team. And it really is almost as the same as rooting for the Giants or the Jets. I mean, that's how dedicated people are. They never want to hear anything else. So it's definitely been surprising to have it in front and center all 4 years.
Declan, what about the dialogue? Why is we built this incredible tool in the internet. We should be able to fact check people. We should be able to have really granular discussions. Why does that never manifested itself? People were saying for the last 2 decades of the internet, 25 years, we're going to get a better process out of this, but it's not a better process.
This is an example where theory outpaces reality. I mean, I have to. Henry's a smart guy, and I have to agree with him. I mean, this is a lot like rooting for a political team. I mean, if you look at it broadly, it doesn't really matter who was elected president on Tuesday. I mean, you're still going to have a drone killing. You're still going to have U.S. troops and 100+ military bases overseas. Taxes are not going to go up by 50%. They're not going to go down by 50%. You're not going to end the war on drugs by fiat. So a lot of this is because the parties have come together on a lot, not all, but a lot of issues. It's like rooting for a sports team. And if you're going to a sports game, I'm going to the Stanford home game tomorrow. You can actually do this, and it's a lot of fun. You can do it in person. But if you're doing it, but how do you root online? Well, this is Twitter. I mean, this is the killer app for Twitter in a way. It's a presidential election eve or presidential elections.
And Henry, is there, on a financial basis, like much, because I know you analyze a lot of stuff, it doesn't seem like there's that big of a difference between the candidates, as Declan's saying. I mean, the difference in tax rates, you would think from the dialogue and the screaming that we were 20 points apart, but we're really single-digit points apart, correct?
That's so right. And that's what I mean. It's, this hyperbolic idea of now Obama is a socialist and we've got to return to capitalism, when nobody on the Democratic side who is reasonable has suggested that tax rates are going to go any higher than maybe they were in the Clinton administration, or maybe a little bit higher. But the idea that we're suddenly going to go back to 90% tax rates, and yet that's the way it's always framed. It's this struggle between black and white and so forth. But the other thing that struck me watching the election is you come out of it and, here we are, and it's incredibly close, and those independents do actually matter. And ultimately we go forward. But to David's point, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So I'm consistently struck by how unbelievably impassioned people are about it when it doesn't, in fact, at least given the 2 candidates we had, make that much of a difference.
Well, what about Nate Silver? I mean, this was he seems to be the winner of the election, right? I mean, by all accounts.
Absolutely.
What impact does this have on journalism and the New York Times going forward, Declan, do you think?
Well, the New York Times did a great job snatching him up a while ago. I mean, he was right again. I was talking with one of my colleagues early on before California came in, saying, well, Nate may not be right in the West Coast, but by the morning when he woke up, he was. But it's not. But you don't need that even. I mean, you can just look at the prediction markets like Intrade and Betfair. I mean, they're also doing a very good job of predicting elections. And so because people put their own money up, their own money is at stake. So big data, this is what the point you made earlier is a winner. But so are prediction markets. I think you're still going to see pundits, though. I'm not going to trust George Will's election predictions anymore. He's a conservative columnist for the Washington Post who predicted a Romney sweep, but they're still going to be around. Television networks need to fill airtime, if nothing else.
Henry, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, it seems like he's become
I thought it was
Mossberg of this
remarkable.
space.
It was remarkable. I mean, this was totally Moneyball in politics. You have the stats geek basically being incredibly clear about the way he saw it and why he saw it that way, explaining it, even going the extra mile at the end to aggressively challenge people who clearly were either rooting or just full of crap, saying whatever came into their heads. And it was such a complete victory for data and analysis as opposed to sentiment and the gut. And it mirrors the argument that we're having nationally about things like climate change, where you've got a huge percentage of people who say, hey, you know, that just doesn't feel right to me. And then you've got the scientists saying, look, I don't know what to say, here's what the data is saying. And hopefully this is a move toward analysis being actually valued a little bit more highly than it is. We live in this culture where so many people, any sort of analysis or study or whatever is dismissed as elitism and what have you, but it couldn't have been more right here. The thing that was most surprising to me was that even in the Romney inner circle, they seemed to have believed that they were actually going to win. And I understand saying that publicly, it's a confidence game, but actually really believing it, I mean, to me, you're getting delusional. And for someone especially who's holding himself out to be a very pragmatic, great manager, understands details, I'm just very surprised that they really were taken in by their own story.
And they didn't seem to listen to the data. I mean, they had time. They knew that they were going to lose. The statistics were there for a long time, and they didn't make changes.
They found a wonderful way to explain it away. And again, doing it publicly, I get it. But in the war room at night, you know, guys, we're still behind. Should we bring out the big kahuna? They don't appear to have done that. They appear to actually have believed their story.
Is this, Declan, is this big data actually leading the voters? Are the voters, when they see In-Trade and they see this sort of crushing statistical analysis coming out months and months and months in advance, is that driving people to participate more for the opposition and try to rally, or just capitulation? Like, it seemed like the GOP kind of capitulated this election. I don't think they really made any radical changes to try to win.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the GOP's real problem is demographics, right? I mean, when you have large numbers of minority groups increasing in numbers and going for the Democratic Party, I mean, last election, maybe that was a fluke. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. I mean, this is a broad, a very powerful trend. Women, minorities, young, anyone under 30. I mean, this is a real problem for the Republicans, and it's actually a problem for anyone who likes the idea of the Democrats having a good, loyal opposition to keep them honest. But to go back to your Romney point for a moment, I mean, the Romney campaign tried big data. It had this application called Orca. It can't get any bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
And with the idea being that we're going to allow everyone to coordinate. We're going to allow volunteers to coordinate. Now, the whole story hasn't come out yet. I expect it will in the next week. But Orca flopped. It crashed. Volunteers weren't getting their marching orders. It wasn't stress tested. And it wasn't available to volunteers until election day. And so they tried to do the big data thing. They just failed, miserably failed. Oh, and one last point. They actually honestly thought that it was a turnout election. They thought that the 2008 turnout was unusual. And they could have won this if turnout had gone a few percentage points either way. I mean, it was really close in Florida, Ohio, Virginia. I mean, we're not talking a 5 percentage point difference in these states. It was much smaller than that.
Henry, you've lamented on your blog that you're looking for a fiscally conservative candidate, but liberal on social issues, or at least neutral on social issues.
And reasonable on social issues.
Yeah, exactly, reasonable. Do you think if the Republican Party did any of the following: one, embraced the gays; two, gave up on abortion as a national issue; and three, any of those, I guess those, and then sort of the religious embrace, and if they just said religion is a private issue and took that off the table, any of those three would win them the election? Two of those three win them the election? Three or three definitely wins them the election? What do you think, Henry?
I don't know. I mean, I think that and an embrace of the fact that America is now an incredibly diverse country would help a lot. I mean, there was barely even any lip service to that, and a view of immigration that acknowledges the fact that everybody who is in this country, or almost everybody, came here from somewhere else. So the idea that we effectively have to shut the borders down, I know we're talking about legal versus illegal immigration, but often that seems to be code for let's close the borders and so forth. So I think it's a lot of issues. I'm not a political analyst, but when I look at it, and certainly when you look at Nate Silver's analysis, the core Republican Party, as it was defined in this election, the group who are going to embrace that, going to get smaller and smaller just through the diversification of the American population. And one of the biggest things that I've always had a problem with is the idea that the Republicans stand for limited government, and yet socially, in fact, what they stand for is very aggressive government that wants to legislate things like, as you talked about, stripping away choice, legislating who you can marry, really tying religion into the state. To me, it's fundamentally inconsistent in a way that bothers me personally, but also seemingly they need to capture that middle to win the elections, and they're certainly not at this point.
Declan, you think you're going to see the GOP just listen to the data, listen to the statistics that are telling them it's over for them unless they change these 3 or 4 kind of fringe kooky, what I think is just kooky, that you would take religion and make it a national issue?
How about rape? The whole rape comment, the guy in Missouri.
I forgot about that. That was kind of weird.
Oh, yeah, a woman's body can control whether or not she gets pregnant from a rape.
Yeah, that
sent them off the deep end. Women were not interested in candidates who talk like that.
In fairness to the Republicans, this wasn't part of the Republican Party platform. They had a few kooky candidates, and in part this was the Tea Party's influence. But yeah, I mean, when you have the candidates saying that kind of thing, they're not exactly going to appeal to a broad audience. Republican parties in general do adjust and they morph and they respond to political pressure. I mean, this is what they do by definition. I mean, you can. I can imagine the next generation of Republican candidates being a bit more reasonable on a lot of these issues. You've got Governor Fortuno in Puerto Rico, who's eligible to run for president. He'll be an attractive candidate in 4 or 8 years. But Henry is saying. Let me ask him a question. He's saying socially liberal and fiscally conservative. I mean, this sounds a lot like the Libertarian Party, and that got 1% of the vote.
To me. Again, I don't even care what you call it. This country has a huge economic and fiscal problem. And so somebody very strong has to come in and deal with that. And I actually think Obama is doing a very good job on that. I don't think he's been helped by the Republicans, but I think now there has to be compromise. We have to get a long-term budget deal in place. We got to get spending in line with revenue, and that's going to be both tax increases and spending cuts. You can't do it either way. So I definitely want somebody there who has the ability to say no. On the other hand, how does something like gay marriage hurt anybody? Preventing it is stripping away freedom. I don't understand why a party that is supposedly for freedom and liberty in America would ever come out against that unless you are really tying a particular religious view, and not a particularly open-minded one, into your state governing philosophy. And so again, that's where I think there are some issues. It's not, to me, it's libertarian. I don't care what it's called. I just think that in order to win elections, it seems like you've got to capture the hearts and minds of the center, and the Republicans have failed to do that.
Hey, when we get back from the commercial break, I want to talk a little bit about employment and technology and efficiency and what's going on with the economy, since we have 2 great guests. And I want to just take a moment to thank our friends at Igloo Software, which is a great intranet software company that you'll actually like to use. And we've been using it here at This Weekend to do very simple things. Like we have an extranet now in our intranet, where the companies who sponsor and partner with us on this program can put their assets into the system, our little intranet. And so we don't have to keep asking for it, or it's trapped in email. Here's all that creative here in our This Weekend locker, and we basically now have a very easy way on our iPads, on our desktops, and with our clients to coordinate all the different projects we're doing, and it's fully hosted and managed in the cloud. And it's obviously super secure. Big companies are using them like IDC, Deloitte, NetApp, BlackBerry, Hospice. A lot of great companies are using them. Go to igloosoftware.com/thisweekin to get a 30-day free trial. And you might even win an iPad mini. They know what you guys are thinking. Everybody wants that iPad mini. I have it. It's become my default Now it's my default. I
That's
love it.
the only thing I see you carrying in your hand when you come in and out of the office
That's
now.
it. I'm going to carry like a 17-pound iPad 3 Retina. The iPad Mini is obviously the winner, and Igloo Software is a winner for giving away an iPad Mini to our audience. And great internet software. We're actually having a really good time using it here at the home office. So everybody it's your Geary if you're a super fan to thank at Igloo Software for supporting the program. Go ahead and go to igloosoftware.com/thisweekend and get a 30-day free trial. Henry, you're an iPad Mini fan, I see, huh? Is it
I think what you just said is very profound on a number of levels. And I think first observation is that very interesting that Steve Jobs, who just obviously unbelievable respect for, remarks he had in 2010 don't appear to be right unless he was just trashing his competitors. It seems like the iPad Mini, according to you and many other very smart people, is going to become the iPad. And in fact, that is going to really unlock the promise of the iPad, which is that every household is going to have 2 or 3 of them sitting on tables everywhere, maybe in every room. And it's going to be just explosive in terms of access to content and so forth. I think it could be a huge product for Apple. I think it's still a little bit too expensive, and I think it'll change their margin structure somewhat for the negative. But overall, it sounds like this is the winner.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. The resolution is not even close to the iPad 3 or whatever you're supposed to call. I think I'm supposed to call it the new iPad.
Yes.
But Steve Jobs was completely wrong on this, and that's the thing about having an extreme personality like that. You could be absolutely 100% wrong, and you're so pig-headed that you're just like, well, nobody could possibly be right but me. So why would we ever even try, right? And then I guess it was Eddie Q or somebody was saying in one of the email exchanges with Jobs, like, hey, I'm using like the Kindle Fire or Nexus, 7-inch. It's pretty good, and it's just so much nicer to hold it in one hand. But I think, Henry, the margin on this has got to be 100% for them, right? It's costing them $180, $190, same cost as the Kindle Fire to make, I'm sure, right?
Well, I mean, they're certainly making more money than the Kindle, but I don't. Yeah. My understanding is that the screen actually is pretty expensive. Can they maintain these margins? Can they keep charging this price? My guess is they'll come out with a Retina early next year or middle of next year, and then we'll have a cheaper version. I would hope so anyway, because I don't think. I think the right price point is around the 200 where everybody else is. Yeah,
well, that's 200 with no margin. I mean, I think Amazon has zero margin and Google has zero margin. Declan, you iPad fan? iPad Mini fan?
I'm slowly going to transition, I think, to more Android devices. But I've been an Apple user since the 1980s, mid-1980s. I worked at Next for a while.
You worked at Next?
I did. I was a Next developer as well. I was a low-level flunky at Next, but I did interact with Steve Jobs a few times.
What was the most interesting, memorable interaction with Steve Jobs?
He drove up, and this was a conference room in Redwood City. They had a Next developer camp, they called it, and I was living on the East Coast, and so I flew out here, and this is and he drove up in a black 911, I was an all-vegetarian lunch. It was a very California lifestyle as someone who grew up on the East Coast. So it was a sort of a glimpse of a different way of Silicon Valley way of living. But this amplifies your point. Jobs had this we'll do it my way or no way a lot of times in Apple's history, in Next history. The original Apple didn't have any way to, the original Mac didn't have any way to expand it, didn't have a hard drive built in. The original Next was $8,000 and was only available in color, not available in color, only available in black and white grayscale. It took him a long time, years in both cases, to say, okay, maybe we can actually bow to what our users want.
Yeah. Okay, next story, Kirin.
Okay, so the next story, we talked about a little the election already. Now, Twitter, this was the interesting thing. Twitter actually did not go down during the election. People are calling this a watershed moment for Twitter.
That's when you know your company's got a low benchmark. You didn't go down and people celebrate.
Well, okay. In all fairness, they had a surge in election tweets of 327,450 tweets per minute. They had a 1-minute peak of 874,560 when the election was called for Obama. There were 31 million election tweets that were sent on November 6th. The 4 more years tweet that Obama sent, the picture where he's hugging Michelle, had over 450,000 retweets, most ever. It beat a Justin Bieber tweet.
That's almost as many likes as George Takei gets on his viral stuff on Facebook. Keep going.
All right. And then on the Twitter engineering blog, they said now that they're starting to see sustained peaks for hours, not just for seconds or minutes. And they also mentioned that they've been optimizing their Ruby runtime. Traffic from mobile clients were hitting a different machine. And even their creative director jumped in and tweeted RIP fail whale. And Mike Isaac of All Things D said it was Twitter's watershed moment, performing as it should during the most tweeted about political moments in the service's 6-year history. In addition to this, of course, they also compiled a bunch of election-related coverage on a special page that had election 2012 hashtag marks on it. So there you got a little bit into the content side of this as well. So was this actually a defining moment for Twitter? And now that they've actually stabilized the service, what's going to be their next challenge?
I don't think this has to do with the service staying up. I think it has to do with the fact that this is the place that, the news is not going to report on the Facebook image that Barack Obama posted, because who cares? People just seem to not care about Facebook as much, but they do love Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like, to me, it feels like, and I'm interested in Henry's thoughts, Facebook is doing all the wrong things right now to get revenue and to squeeze people, and Twitter seems to be the cooler service. It just on a temperature of the world, it feels like Facebook is becoming authoritative and boring and ugly, and Twitter is becoming essential. What do you think, Henry?
So I think a few things. I think first, it's always amusing to me to listen to people say a company is completely screwed because their service goes down because the demand is so great for it that they can't keep up with it.
High-class
That's
problem.
Something that exactly. It happened to AOL in the late 90s. It happened to eBay. I mean, obviously, some companies get killed. MySpace got killed because they couldn't, or Friendster really got killed because they couldn't manage it. But temporary outages, companies can deal with that, and it's a sign of overwhelming demand, which is wonderful. So that's never been an issue. I actually think the big issue for Twitter, and I should confess that I'm completely addicted to it, is it is not in any way, shape, or form a mainstream technology. There is a very passionate group of the population that uses Twitter constantly, but if you look at the Pew studies, we're still talking about 10 to 15% of the country. You compare that to Facebook, huge usage, 70% penetration. It is absolutely a mass market technology. And I realize that a lot of folks in the tech world are actually appalled by that with the Facebook. It's become boring. We don't want to be there. And kids are quitting because their parents are on it and it's so uncool. And they're going to Instagram. And the good news is for Facebook that they own Instagram. So that's not a terrible outcome. But I think the key next challenge for Twitter is finding a way to really become a mainstream technology. And part of that is maybe finding ways to radically simplify the service. The fact that you have to figure out who to follow, and there's still all these inside jokes and things like that. It's addictive, but it's addictive for a very, very information intensive consumer, and most just aren't.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be smart to use Twitter, and right? I mean, it's almost like you have to. Almost like using work. IRC, right? Like IRC is where all the cool kids hung out. Like you had to figure out IRC, right?
That's right. You have to do work, and consumers don't do work. And that's the big secret that a lot of big consumer brand managers know that a lot of folks in the tech community always miss. It's not about features. It's about the whole thing, and it's got to be as simple as possible. And Twitter's still complicated.
Declan, what do you think? 50 years from now, Facebook, Twitter, either of them around? Or is Twitter surging now and Facebook declining? What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, maybe the way to think about it is that there are sort of natural caps on market penetration. I mean, Facebook is not going to go that much higher. I mean, it could be proven wrong, but I suspect my grandmother is not going to get on. She actually gave up her internet connection. She didn't use it enough to make it worthwhile. Facebook can be very asynchronous. You don't need to be on there right now talking. You can just check in on what your cousin or high school friend was doing a week later or a day later. And Twitter is more synchronous. It really thrives when you have these live events. Maybe there's a cap to how many people want to use it this way. I think I'll take issue with Twitter being the nice guy in the block. If you talk to developers for the last half year, they've been locking down their API. They have every right to do this. It's private property. They can if they want, but they run the risk of pissing off developers. You've seen the rise of app.net and similar services that have developers are just so happy to see a company that wants to work with them, and they want to build all these wonderful next generation apps on top of something that's open, not something that's closed. And there are more API restrictions coming, I think, in February from Twitter. So Twitter has to do something to keep its developers on board. Otherwise, they'll build the next wonderful product on app.net or something, I suspect.
But Henry, I mean, you think their charge to shut down the API is really about them saying, let's have less noise around Twitter, let's have it be one singular experience, right?
It makes perfect sense. I mean, again, huge just angst and whining in the community, and understandably, because a lot of the folks who are now getting shut out are the ones who made Twitter this incredibly powerful utility that so many people are on. But Twitter has been clear from the beginning, or at least some people in the Twitter ecosystem have been clear, this is the step, and this is what a lot of platforms do. And so this is a risk you take when you build a company, or at least an app, around a particular technology like that. So they're perfectly within their rights to do it. I think the next thing, can they build a real business out of it? Certainly anecdotally, it seems like it's working well. But again, as I said before, there's still only a slice of the market, and the brand is completely mass market, and yet people try it and they don't know what to do with it, and they drop it. And Twitter's got to solve that problem.
What's really interesting to me about Twitter, or what's sort of the trend that's happening is that I see, is that the most interesting and intelligent people are now not even logging into Facebook anymore. They're just syndicating their tweets over there. And so, like, Henry says really interesting things on Twitter. We have exchanges back and forth. We both syndicate our tweets. I think Henry does too, to Facebook. And then once in a while, I'll log into Facebook and look and see that there's another discussion going on. It's almost like this water cooler, of people discussing our discussion. So it's almost like a class system. Like, intelligent people are discussing it here, and then it gets syndicated to the masses over here, and the dumb people can talk about it there.
I'd be careful to call everybody on Facebook dumb, Jason.
Well, I just called 70% of the country dumb, but it's almost like
friends.
Whatever. I mean, just
Twitter's a broadcast medium. Facebook is much more intimate.
Exactly.
I don't know if I feel that way. But what do you think about double taxation in Facebook? I mean, people paid Facebook. They put the like buttons on their sites. They tried to build up their fan base on Facebook, which I said from the beginning, this is a stupid idea. Like, you're basically paying Mark Zuckerberg to get people to like his page, which happens to have your name on it. Now, everybody got duped. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for some businesses, millions of dollars for some businesses, tens of thousands for smaller businesses to build up a fan base that now, when you try to reach that fan base, the edge rank is not letting you reach them. Unlike Twitter, where you have if you have followers, 100% see your tweet. Only 1%, 5% of people are seeing it, and now they're asking you to pay to reach your fan base. It's almost like paying twice. What do you think, Henry? How big of a mistake is this?
I don't know, Jen. I hear that and I say, cry me a river. I mean, they give you access to 1 billion people for free, and now you're going to sit there and say you tricked me. I mean, the fact that brands can host pages and gather fans for free on Facebook.
Well, they were paying for it. A lot of these people, they were paying $1, $2 to Facebook to get those followers. You do realize that?
Well, certainly when they're advertising, that's right.
Yeah.
But you could have the ability to get people for free. And so I don't know. I mean, it seems when you use Facebook, when you use Twitter, there's no guarantee that everybody's going to see your stuff. And yes, they have an algorithm and that makes it a little different. But I don't know. I would cut Facebook slack. I mean, they have totally focused on the product from day one. They have now gotten serious about trying to build a huge enterprise based on that. And some of the sponsored stories that they're doing, anecdotally, they seem to be working, and we'll see. I mean,
but you don't invest in it. You wouldn't spend any of your investors' money building out your Facebook presence.
Well, I mean, Facebook's a great partner for us, and distribution's very important, and we get a huge amount of traffic, and we're grateful for anybody who shares any of our stuff on Facebook. We don't actually have a dedicated site within Facebook, but that's in part because our stories get distributed very nicely through Facebook.
Right.
And I think, but these are early in the Facebook growth curve, and there was a lot of excitement around commerce. You're going to build stores within Facebook. And
but you're not spending $25,000 a month saying we're going to build up 25,000 people who are subscribers and get to 1 million someday on our page, and you're not publishing inside that ecosystem like other of your contemporaries tried to do.
That's right. I mean, we didn't, a lot of the early, at least for publishers, a lot of the early success seemed like it was sort of gimmicky, that people didn't really know that they were using an app in a way and it was sharing everything and huge traffic spikes. It just didn't seem particularly sustainable. I mean, we have the ability to log in. You're on our site. You want to share with your friends automatically. That works. But I think just overall, Facebook's big challenge now is that everybody thought it was the next Google. Now everybody has sobered up and realized that Google still has the best advertising medium in the history of man. You type in what you want, and then suddenly they serve the ads. Whereas Facebook, even though they can get you to the right people, you're still advertising at a party. And a lot of people aren't open to that. And so it's always going to be challenging in a way that Google is not. And I think some of the new products they're doing, the sponsored stories, especially on mobile, make a lot of sense.
What do you think, Declan, about the sort of capacity for publishers to make a business go inside of Facebook? Smart idea? I mean, is CNET really invested in that? Or is it just sort of like Henry's approach? If you happen to like it and we get some traffic referred from there, that's fine.
I mean, we've invested a bit in it. I wouldn't say that this is a huge priority for us, because you are taking the risk of you're building your business on someone else's platform, or use the term ecosystem, it's just as valid. And then if they want to make changes, then well, you get the rug yanked out from you. You're not very happy. I mean, I think Facebook's move, a sponsored promoted move, is brilliant and possibly slightly evil. I mean, imagine if Google did something like this, right? Like, okay, all you New York businesses, if you want your site to appear in organic search results, then for New York, maybe you can appear in the rest of the country, but for New York residents, then pay up a little extra money, maybe like $5 a day or something like that. I mean, the outcry would be amazing. You'd have the U.S. Department of Justice file an antitrust lawsuit within 5 seconds. But Facebook is immune from this. I'm not saying they should be the target of an antitrust lawsuit. There's a lot of problems with antitrust law, but it's just kind of interesting that you see this happening, and you might see Twitter do the same thing. I mean, Henry knows much more about this than I do. But if their investors are going to want to pay out, their early employees are going to want to pay out, and how do you do that? There are only a few paths, and increased revenue. All the paths point to trying to find a way to increase revenue.
And we've been through this, sort of social becoming the fabric of our society, or playing a major role now through maybe 3 or 4 sites: Friendster, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace. And it's always ended the same way. It keeps ending in tears, which is you have to sell out your users, you have to bombard them with advertising in this most intimate of contexts. Is there going to be does app.net have it right? Like, hey, pay some modest amount of money and have no advertising? I mean, I instantly paid for it and I instantly endorsed that, but I don't know if the public, they're pretty averse to paying. Is there a way to make this work without advertising, Henry?
Well, I mean, I guess Facebook could offer a version of the site that doesn't have advertising. Would people pay for it? A freemium version? I don't know. I mean,
would you?
Would I? I would not.
$10 a year, take out all the ads, no?
$10 a year? I mean, at that level, that's not very much money. It'd certainly be interesting, put it that way.
But wait, if it's $10 a year and there were 8 billion people, if there were 800 million people, it's $8 billion. I mean, I'm not saying 100% would do it, but that's an $8 billion pie. And if only 10% did it, you're talking about a large amount of money.
I don't think you'd get anywhere near that penetration. I mean, I think it would be far lower. People would flee and so forth. Everyone complains about advertising. Sometimes when you offer an alternative, people are loath to pay up for anything. Everything's supposed to be free all the time. Look, Facebook can screw it up. I think they have the right guy in command in terms of hoping that they will not. I mean, you cannot have a guy who's more dedicated to the product than Mark Zuckerberg. He's been very clear about that from day one. He seems to have gotten a little bit more capitalistic lately. He sounded that way in the earnings call, saying, look, when we design new products, the advertising is baked into that. But he should, I hope, stick to his guns in saying, look, product comes first.
But he did say, I mean, obviously famously in the movie, but advertising is terrible. He hates advertising. He'll never have advertising in the main column. He went public, as you predicted, I believe. I remember one of your pieces. He changed his tune, and you're saying now he's really changed his tune, that his stock is cut in half. He's becoming, I guess, a grown-up CEO in that he's putting, maybe not advertising and revenue first, Henry, but certainly it's a close second.
Look, I just hope that he doesn't lose unshakable view that he had prior to the IPO that the product is most important, because it is. And who's the other CEO that has had that kind of long-term view and delivered? Jeff Bezos at Amazon. It has always been about the product and customers first. And Jeff's very focused on financials. He's not ignoring it in the least. But the whole thing is do the right thing for customers, and it'll work out in the end. Mark Zuckerberg has talked a great game on that. I hope he stands by it. And
what do you think, Declan? You going to stand by it?
Well, I think that advertising can, look, us coastal pundits, that's all of us here, like to criticize advertising. Oh, let's do this ad-free. I don't think the rest of the population cares much about the dangers, perceived evils of advertising. There are plenty of advocacy groups, left-leaning groups in D.C. that basically want to ban advertising, which basically means banning a large portion of the internet. And this is, we'll see them possibly on the ascendance in the next Obama administration. But there's people don't mind ads and sometimes even like them. I don't think that an ad-supported Facebook is a terrible thing. I don't think that Facebook is going to offer an ad-free version. App.net is kind of clever. Have developers pay, maybe eventually end users pay. But on the other hand, there's still a minuscule fraction of a fraction of either Twitter or any other social network.
I think the two gentlemen are correct. Advertising is not that big of a deal to most people, of course, is an astute point. And I don't think Zuckerberg's going to go over some whatever line to make it, abhorrent to use Facebook. However, I do think that there is a premium service to be had, and I can see the adoption of Path is increasing, and the usage is increasing amongst, the people who are the avant-garde, and app.net. Maybe it's not a juggernaut yet, but it's definitely captured the hearts and minds of developers in a major way. If you could get 10% of the audience, 5% of the audience to pay, subsidize the rest of the audience, and keep it ad-free, I think that somebody could make a product that is just more delightful to use if they leaned into that, but it would not be a venture capitalist's dream. So that is the limitation of it, which is, if you get 1 billion people and 5% pay, you've only got 50 million people playing. They pay $20 a year, you've got $1 billion company. That's not going to cut it with VCs for that size business. They're going to want to squeeze more revenue.
$1 billion. Come on, let's not raise the bar too much. That's not so bad.
I just think the VCs and the market just pushes you. It seems like, I guess maybe Amazon is the one example of, Henry, this is your expertise, but the only person who seems to have successfully pushed back the stock market without their stock price being absolutely decimated is Amazon.
Well, and look what it took to do that, though. Amazon stock was destroyed for 7 years.
Right.
They had a couple of early years out of the gate. They were gangbusters. That was the whole, the late 1990s. Then the stock collapsed, and it almost went bankrupt. It was that close. One analyst predicted they were going to go bust. Stock recovered a little bit, but then bumped along for about 5 to 7 years before it really took off. During that period, the unbelievable insults thrown at Jeff Bezos. People have given up on the idea that Amazon couldn't make money. That was the whole mantra in the 1990s. But still, they're not focused enough on making money, everything else. Jeff Bezos, very thick skin, always focused on the long term. And by the way, he's doing it right now. Amazon's margins are terrible because they're investing so much in Amazon Web Services and in the Kindle and in the smartphone that we haven't even seen yet. We'll probably see early next year. They're making huge bets, and those bets don't pay off this quarter or next quarter or even next year. But Bezos, he owns a lot of the company, and he is just very strong-headed when it comes to doing that. And Mark Zuckerberg's very young, but he has shown some of the same ability to just ignore critics. And critics who are much, held up, legendary, all that stuff. Yeah. So that's why I have hope that he will actually make the right decisions here.
And how ironic is it for you and I to be having this discussion? You famously made a bullish call on Amazon, were perhaps wrong in the short term, but certainly correct in the long term. How do you reconcile that? It's got to be a great FU for you back to the market that you are such a tremendous success now.
Well, I'm glad that one worked. I had plenty that didn't work, so I'm glad that one worked. But I'll tell you what I'm really glad about is I think that the American business ethic has been fundamentally warped in the last 10 to 15 years in a very destructive way by the stock market and by the incredibly short-term demands of a hyper professionalized investment industry. Investment industry, the mutual fund industry, it's about what's happening this week, this quarter, same thing for the hedge funds. That is terribly destructive to most companies because, as you know, from having built many businesses, you simply cannot maximize both the short-term quarterly performance and your 5 to 10 year outlook. You can't. Yeah. You've got to go one way or the other. And there are going to be times when you have a big opportunity, you want to make a big bet and spend a lot of money. Your earnings in the next year are going to go down. From a long-term perspective, that may be a brilliant thing to do. But from a short-term, you would be crushed in the stock.
You'll be fired.
Well, how about Google?
You probably would. I mean, that's the thing. If you don't own enough, so it really. This is a much larger issue, but I think that the religion of, quote, shareholder value that this country has become obsessed with has been incredibly destructive. And our profit margins are too high now. That's why we have such a high unemployment rate. We have got to get companies to focus on the long term, invest more now in people and research and everything else to grow much faster over the long term instead of maximizing short term. And that's what Bezos has done in spades. And I hope that Zuckerberg, again, it sucks to have your stock cut in half, but part of that is because investors got completely crazy at the IPO.
Yeah, not all his fault. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You make a good point, though, Kirin. I mean, it seems like if one company has balanced tremendous earnings with long-term investment, it would be Sergey and Larry at Google, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're helped by the fact that they have this absolutely miraculous business. I mean,
that doesn't seem, anybody seems to be able to make a dent in.
Profitability. That's right. And that's continuing and so forth. They're helped by that. But huge kudos to them for continuing to invest in stuff. I mean, Google's doing a lot of cool stuff. I'm not crazy about it from a non-focus perspective, but they're making the big bets.
Declan, what are your thoughts vis-a-vis employment? And Henry makes a really interesting point, which is if you're so obsessed and the market is so obsessed with the short-term earnings, companies are sitting on mountains, tens of billions of dollars. Largest hedge fund in the world is now Apple with 110 or 20 billion dollars. Google 30, 40, 50 billion at any given point in time. Same thing for Microsoft. These companies don't want to hire people because they're slaves to the earnings. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot?
Well, I mean, it's difficult when your company's a bit more mature and you have employees who say, well, I want my Google stock units, GSUs, to be worth something. And so it's great that you have, Larry and Sergey, that you have these 5-year plans, but I need to buy a house next year or pay for an addition. So it is more tricky for them than some other folks. But, I mean, there's also a political point to be made here, and that is companies have not known until 2 days ago or 3 days ago who's going to be the next president, who's going to have control of the Senate, who's going to have control of the House. I mean, we have probabilities, and sometimes that's good enough. But so that's one reason, not the only reason, mind you, but one reason why they're sitting on all this cash, especially small businesses, because of the uncertainty about regulations, uncertainty about taxes, and the Obamacare taxes that'll start kicking in next year on medical device makers and other folks. So it's been a weird political environment for the last year or so.
Can I disagree with David on that?
Yes.
I have to say, I mean, I realize that these are the talking points that Republicans have distributed for 4 years, all about the uncertainty and the regulation, and maybe taxes will go up, so don't invest. I have to say, from a business perspective, I have never met one honest CEO or entrepreneur who has ever made a decision or not made a decision because regulations might change a little bit or taxes might go up a little bit, what have you. Running our business, we are very concerned about the uncertainty, but it has nothing to do with the political uncertainty or the regulatory uncertainty. It is all about the economic uncertainty.
For you, there's more uncertainty in Greece and Spain than Washington.
Absolutely. And that comes back to the fact that, look, American consumers are broke. That's the problem. We built up debt for 30 years. We're now trimming debt, and that is good, but it's going to take a while for us to get it down. And that is creating a lot of uncertainty in a crappy economy. And that's the big issue. But how do we get out of it? Corporations have to suck it up and invest in America and stop having the highest profit margins in history. You listen to people in Washington talk about business. It's like our companies are a disaster. Nobody's making any money. It's terrible. We've got to unlock business. It is a crock. Our businesses are big companies, not small companies, but big companies, highest profit margins ever.
Yeah.
huge cash balances, as Jason just said, and they're just sitting on it and hoarding it because that's what Wall Street's telling them to do. It is time to find some ways to get them to spend, lower today's profits, invest in the country, hire more people that will create more spending money, and then we can get ourselves growing again.
There's some talk, capital gains keeps coming up, and capital gains obviously relates to our industry in a major way because venture capitalists are investing with this basically half-price taxing, due to capital gains, which, listen, I've been the beneficiary of, and, I don't want to see it go away. Do you think that we should take capital gains and even make it more advantageous for rich people to invest in small enterprises, Declan? Is that something that they're talking about in Washington, D.C.? Because it seems like capital gains has become the enemy when you see somebody like Romney paying whatever ridiculous tax rate, 11% or 12%, and then your cousins are paying 30 or 40%.
No, and Teresa Heinz Kerry, if you go back to the 2004 election, was paying very little in taxes because it was all tax-free munis is where her income came from. I mean, once you have the money in the bank and you're sitting on millions or billions of dollars, depending on who you are, I mean, then you don't really have to worry too much about it. It's more the people getting there in the first place. If I don't want to go down the path of asset taxes versus income taxes, but let's talk about one thing that that may be happening. Or maybe not be happening next year, and that is immigration and visas. And this goes to the employment point. I mean, the companies want to hire when sometimes they can't find qualified workers. We're printing all these degrees for engineers who are very well educated here and then sending them home since they can't get visas. Mark Andreessen told us at CNET 2 days ago that he really wants to see the Startup Act 2.0 go through Congress, which would create immigrant visas, which would allow folks with master's, PhD in engineering disciplines to stay here if they're educated here. But it was introduced half a year ago. It hasn't. I mean, both the House and the Senate. It's been endorsed by everyone. Microsoft.
It seems
Facebook.
like immigration
but it
is
hasn't
just
gone anywhere. There's been zero hearings. Not one hearing in either chamber.
Kirin, you worked in immigration before this. I mean, Obama seems like he's very pro-immigration. He's been in for 4 years. He's got nothing done, essentially. Why not? And why can't he get it done?
Oh, man. Immigration is the third rail of politics, right? You don't really benefit politically whether you act, in favor of more immigration or in less. I mean, the problem is that he had other, first of all, very legitimate things to deal with first. Right. And, was a promise to Latino voters in particular. I think that, there was such a, the black and white polarization you've seen in other areas, definitely saw in immigration as well. It was all about, secure the border and, no amnesty. And once you put the argument in those terms, there's no way to talk about all this other stuff. I mean, things that are very reasonable that people agreed on, as recently as 5-6 years ago, they don't even want to talk about anymore. And that's just not reasonable. You have to be able to talk about some of this stuff. Not all of immigration is about legal or illegal. Yeah. There are very real issues around employment, and most definitely it would help the country if you allowed certain people who are educated here. Yeah. And that's one of the things. It is much harder to get a job in a country if you don't have a degree from that country. And so Australia actually realized this, and they made it much easier for foreign students to stay in Australia after they finish their degrees. They figured it was in their interest. Why hasn't the U.S. figured that out yet?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I think they should come up with some very simple things. I had a couple of companies that I had angel invested in or was considering. They were like, we're raising around, everybody in the United States wants to invest in us, but we don't know if we can be there. If the investors in the United States, if a venture capitalist or angel investor is going to put together a pool of money to bring people from another country, I think we should just accept them. There should be some, if you raise over $500,000, you get 2 people can come into the country. If you raise over $2 million, you can bring 4 people into the country, whatever it is. Some, little, prorated system about that. And then, if you come here for your degree, you should get immediately plus 10 years. If you get any college degree, plus 10 years. You get another degree, another 10 years. That would be such a simple system.
Well, it should just be much easier just to get your permanent residency, right? Rather than these temporary situations. I mean, if you're pretty sure that somebody's going to add to your society, then why would you make them go through hoops to stay?
Henry, what do you think? Why is this? Is this just Obama was desperate to get his second term, and now within his second term, we're going to correct all these immigration problems and make marijuana legal?
The immigration thing is a no-brainer, and I will defer to Kirin on why it hasn't been happening, because it is just such a no-brainer. And all I can say is on the other side of the aisle, again, it's this knee-jerk reaction. You can't have that. And no more, close the borders, basically. And so it is an absolute no-brainer. On marijuana, look, I have to say, I didn't think I'd see an election where we had gay marriage legalized in a couple of states and marijuana legalized. I mean, it's always just struck me as absolutely preposterous that you can walk down any city block and buy all the drugs you want in a drugstore and the liquor store and drink caffeine and everything else. And yet, whoa, you can't have pot. That's terrible. Like last days of the Roman Empire, debauchery. Yeah. And so finally, it's becoming a little reasonable. And you know what? It's already a good business in Colorado. People have jobs, and maybe they'll tax it. And that's good. And it eliminates the black market that's always been there. I mean, it just makes so much sense. So I'm actually encouraged by that.
Yeah. There you go, folks. Henry Blodget says, smoke more weed. That's the endorsement. Declan, let's talk about weed a little bit more, because it is it is a representative issue of, this sort of society where we just won't make advances forward when something just seems incredibly logical. What do you think of the marijuana laws across the country and what's happening?
Well, I mean, I tend to be libertarian on this issue, and so I'm encouraged to see the ballots initiatives passing. But the problem is that the Obama administration could have said, hey guys, we got reelected, we can actually do the right thing. But instead, you had his Drug Enforcement Administration say immediately afterwards, well, we're still going to enforce federal marijuana laws, which make it a crime to possess marijuana. So, great, voters in Colorado, et cetera. In theory, you can have it, but if you try to buy it or you try to possess it, then the DEA will come and put you in jail for 10 years. And I'll disagree with Henry a little on the immigration point. I mean, it's a left-right coalition in favor of it. The Bush, for his faults, was generally pro-immigration, but you have the left-right coalition against it, which includes labor unions. After Google, Microsoft, Oracle, Intel, et cetera, sent a letter to Obama saying, please let us bring more already employed by us foreign workers in the country, you had the AFL-CIO write a letter to Obama immediately afterwards saying, oh, no, this is going to cost American jobs. And so you have this, it's not a partisan issue, unfortunately. We're talking legal immigration here. Illegal might be more partisan.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, is that people actually are so dumb that they actually think that bringing intelligent people in here to start businesses would have a negative impact on Grobjo.
There are some people who think that every immigrant is a Mexican. Yes, they are the majority. They are the largest immigrant foreign-born group in this country, but that's not everybody. And you know what? People actually come other ways besides over a border. They come on airplanes and ships, and guess what? People also overstay visas. You don't have to come over the border to come illegally. There's lots of still illegal people, or people who are here unauthorized status from Ireland, from the Philippines, from wherever. They did not get here by the border.
Okay, let's do last two stories and we'll wrap up.
All right.
Quick ones.
I think this is kind of interesting. Proposition E, in San Francisco to end the 1.5% payroll tax. Ron Conway supported, did pass overwhelmingly, over 70% of the votes. Firms will now pay a gross receipts tax that varies according to industry. Now, Conway got interested in this because he moved to the city after raising his family in Silicon Valley, and all the companies that he was investing in were up in arms about this tax. So I guess, what do you think is going to happen now? Will more startups stay in or move to San Francisco?
I think we have this here in Santa Monica. What do you think, Declan? Have you been following this?
No, I only followed it peripherally, but it does. It sort of broadens the tax base, because, and it will probably at the margins. I mean, this is economic change takes place at the margins, right? Makes San Francisco marginally more attractive. I mean, a lot depends on things like whether you can construction, things like whether you're going to eventually pay a tax to actually get into the city, congestion taxes. But the city has made some great strides in trying to improve part of Market Street. This is the area where Twitter is. And so I don't think it's going to be a huge success, but it doesn't have to be a huge success. The Google doesn't have to move there. It just needs to be a modest success to keep that area alive. So it's more like check back in 3 years.
Declan, why is there such a concern about the gentrification and the sort of evolution of San Francisco from a place where there's a lot of cheap rents to a place where, more like Manhattan, you can only live on the island of Manhattan if you are very affluent? Well, it seems like there's a lot of pain around this topic.
There is, and if you talk to folks who moved to San Francisco in the 60s or 70s, they say, now things are so much more expensive. It's gentrification. I can't afford to go out to eat in my neighborhood. But you hear these complaints everywhere. Has it really changed the character of the city? Well, I mean, one reason why housing is so expensive, it's supply and demand. Housing in the Bay Area more broadly, we're not just talking about San Francisco here, was in line with the rest of the country until the 1980s, and then a few things happened. Silicon Valley grew, but also a lot of building restrictions. restrictions. And so if you could have more dense building, which Manhattan does allow, but San Francisco doesn't, except in a few areas, then you would increase supply and drive down costs. But San Francisco is just not going to allow that. So part of the problem is the city's own making.
And Henry, in New York, nobody is under any delusion that Manhattan is for rich people or ultra wealthy, and the boroughs are just for the wealthy. And if you're anybody else, you're taking the Long Island Expressway.
New York, the real estate market is just not to be believed. I mean, It doesn't matter what happens on Wall Street, it just keeps going up.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Last story.
Okay, well, I think we have to talk about the Priceline acquisition of Kayak.
That's a big deal, yeah.
A very big deal in the online travel space. It was $1.8 billion. That's $500 million cash, $1.3 billion in stock. It was $40 a share for Kayak, and that's a 29% premium on their close. Kayak only went public in July. They had only actually reported one quarter before this deal was announced. Now, Priceline is the most valuable corporation in the online travel market with a market cap of $31.3 billion. And Rafat, who you remember from the old,
with us,
yes, another old-time person. He's got a new venture called Skift, and he's all about covering the online travel space. And he said Priceline will gain a great online and mobile team to build its portfolio, and will put muscle behind the Kayak brand. So, is this a smart move for Priceline, and can we expect more consolidation in online travel?
Well, the interesting thing about Kayak and Sidestep, which they, I guess, merged with or bought, is that those businesses were under massive attack by Google, and they should have gone out of business. The fact that they have survived this long after 3 or 4 near-death experiences is miraculous. And I guess Priceline, it's the same thing. That was another business that was supposed to go away. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, the Priceline is one of the most amazing turnaround stories I've ever seen. And it's hard to say that, and obviously you have Apple, which is now the most valuable company in the world after being left for dead. But Priceline, it was a gimmick. It was a big name, and it just had a tremendous crash, and they have built their way back. They made a very smart buy in Europe, and now $30 billion. This is a company people don't pay any attention to at all. And the fact that they have this roaring business, and they're now using their capital in the form of both cash and stock, which is very highly valued, to really build out their presence in the United States, where they have not actually been as strong. It's been Europe that's driven it. Very smart.
Yeah, and looking at this Priceline chart is just an amazingly awesome, like Web 1.0, 2.0 story.
Oh, it's incredible.
You have, I mean, it was trading at $800, $900, whatever, in 2000, comes crashing down to nothing, single digits. And then this amazing recovery back to 600. I mean, if you invested $1,000 for a share, you went down to $10 and then back up to $800. I mean, talk about a roller coaster, huh, Henry?
Unheard of. It's bigger than Yahoo. I mean, it would have been absolutely unfathomable several years ago. And while we're on the topic of unbelievable in terms of the stock market, what's one of the best stocks been this year? AOL. Everyone wrote that thing off for dead. Yeah. This is the company, bought your company, everything else. Everyone thought they were done. And now here they are, $40 a share. Everything looks great. I mean, and miraculous things could happen.
For content companies, which all three of us are involved in, it's pretty great to see AOL doing better because they're going to be the main acquirer, along with Yahoo, of Business Insider or Gawker or Inside.com or any of these companies. Like we need to have a strong AOL. They're making $100 million in video revenue. They were only making $10 million 2 years ago. I mean, their video is going off the charts, and nobody even knows they have video. And I think Yahoo is the same story.
It's extraordinary. I mean, it really is great to see. And it's wonderful to see these companies turn around. I mean, again, going back to the really short-term focus of the stock market, to see stuff like this, it's great.
Any chance Marissa and Tim reunite and the two companies merge?
I don't know. I mean, I think it would make sense. I think there's a lot of efficiency to be gained from that. On the other hand, Marissa's definitely got a lot to focus on, and I think Yahoo really has to focus, and she's got to make those decisions first. And AOL can still be focused. I mean, there's more to do there. So there's time. But
how do you grade each CEO? How do you grade each CEO in their tenure?
Well, I work for Yahoo, so I'm not going to sit here and do a line by line of Marissa. I just have to say that everyone is really excited, and I think she has done a great job, and she has reinvigorated the place. And just by everything she said on the conference call, I like to think strategically, I thought everything she said made perfect sense. So that was great to hear. I think Yahoo has a massive opportunity, especially in the news side. AOL, I think there's still a lot of figuring out, like what business is going to work.
Yeah.
But they have some great brands, The subscription business is starting to stabilize, and still a lot of cash flow and so forth. So a lot of interesting things can happen there.
Declan, what's the vibe on Yahoo right now? It seems like Marissa's building a management team, buying some interesting companies, stabilizing, and there's hope. What's the vibe?
There is. I mean, I work in San Francisco, but live, and I'm talking to you right now from the center of Silicon Valley, just west of Palo Alto. And I think you're right. The people I talk to who work at Yahoo are, for the first time in years, excited about their jobs. Nobody would actually show up at Yahoo. I'm exaggerating, but Yahoo would have a lot of people working from home on Fridays. But now, post Marissa, you have a Friday Google-like, directly imported from Google. Let's talk with our CEO session. So people were showing up. They're excited. The problem is that a lot of employees who could leave did leave because they saw what they believed to be the writing on the wall. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. But Jason, I signed up for your Inside.com site earlier on. After you mentioned it, all I got was something saying your subscription to our list has been confirmed.
Yes.
So what does that mean? What am I going to get?
I have to figure out what to do. I'm figuring that out right now. No, obviously Mahalo is pivoting to Inside.com, and we've been doing video and apps, and so the writing's on the wall. I think we know what we need to do, but it's a little bit early for that discussion. But we're getting closer. I think Yahoo is going to do tremendous. Actually, right now, I think if you're a developer and you have an offer from Facebook and you have an offer from Yahoo, I think. And I'm interested in Henry's point of view on this too, and Declan's. Which one do you take? Which one, let's say they give you, $500,000 in stock. Which one is the better bet? Which one's going to be more fun to work on? Declan, Henry? Jump ball?
The first is that you hold out for Twitter or Google. Barring that, I think Yahoo might have greater upside. You're starting from a lower base.
Yeah. What do you think, Henry?
That's interesting, Declan. I mean, Yahoo's almost higher beta. I think same with Facebook. Google is just fantastically wealthy. You want to get compensated in cash, they can do that. There's certainly room on the stock. It's not trading at a particularly high price. I don't know. I mean, you tell me, Jason.
What do you think? Yahoo, if it was you and you had the opportunity to sell your company and work at Yahoo or work at Facebook, I mean, which one do you think would be the better bet if you had to take an all-stock offer?
Look, I'm again in our business. Our business fits very well with what Yahoo does.
That's
it does
true.
not fit with what Facebook does. It doesn't fit with what Google does. So I wouldn't even know how to.
That's a failed test. But I mean, for a developer, I think that it's a jump ball. Which, if I was asking this question pre-Marissa and you said, should you go to Yahoo or Facebook? It's like, well, that's 100% you go to Facebook. Now, it's 50-50. There might be some really good. You're actually thinking about it as a developer and talented person. Marissa might be more fun and more, interesting to work for than Zuckerberg.
Right.
People are going to have that debate, and that's what Yahoo needed.
But you did say not too long ago that if you got an offer from Yahoo, you might think, well, I don't really know that I want to sell my company to Yahoo. There's not enough, kind of cachet there, right?
Right. There was no cachet pre-Marissa, I think. And
but somebody
it would have been
somebody like a Foursquare or, we talked about Path or some other companies, you were just like, no, I can't see Dave Morin, Dennis Crowley, those kind of folks selling to Yahoo. To them, that might seem like it was not a success.
Previously, but I think with Marissa, I think that would start to change because she might be able to lull them and say hey, listen, you're going to have a big role. There's a big opportunity. You could help me build this. You'd be a partner in it. I think that she now, as she builds this team out, I think she's starting to have some credibility, which is good. She brings some credibility. But for some of those folks, like Dave Morin and Dennis Crowley, I think they're going to take it all the way. For them, it's binary.
It's not about who's going to buy them. It's about...
It's at this point for Dennis Crowley or for Dave Morin, people who've made money already, it's we either go for success or you've got to fire me and then sell the company for parts. I think that's sort of how those guys think. Anyway, this has been an amazing program. Henry, hey, thanks a lot. Everybody follow Blodget, Blodget. And what's coming up? You got any events coming up or anything I can plug?
We do. We've got Ignition in 2 weeks in New York. Great lineup. We'd love to get you out here at some point for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll be out there. Everybody go check out Ignition over at businessinsider.com. Great conference. And Declan, you can follow at Declan M on Twitter and at CNET, of course. Yes?
News.com. We still
News.com,
own
right.
that. It's an even more direct way to get to the news section of our site. But yeah, thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody follow Declan. Really interesting stuff he's working on. Thank you, Kirin, for reading the news, although you didn't get to read too much because you got those smart guys talking over us.
That's all right.
That's okay. We like it. It's a power panel. And hey, Superfan, Andy's here. How you doing, Superfan Andy? Sometimes we let a Superfan come in and watch the show. Was it a big thrill for you to watch the show?
Yeah, it was cool.
It's pretty cool?
Yeah.
How long you been watching the show?
Since it started.
So for 3 years you've been watching this program?
Yep.
Are you as tired as I am?